Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Metal Mastermind. I am joined with my co-host, of course, the one and only Jason Stallworth.
What's up, guys?
How
Happy
are
Metal
you?
Wednesday. I always say Happy Metal Monday because it's got elms, like Metal Mastermind, but we'll say Metal Wednesday today because that
Yes,
still sounds
well,
cool.
technically, the Wednesday is just an upside down M, so
That's true, dude.
we
I didn't
still
think
got the
about it
metal
like
going.
that. That's
Oh
awesome, man.
man, so
Oh,
it's
wow.
kind of like the horns in a way. There you go, Metal Wednesdays right there. There's the W.
Yeah. So I hope everybody is having an awesome week so far. I see we got a few folks coming on here, so that's really cool. Hope you guys are having a great week. We've got a really interesting topic and it's going to be a fun topic, I think. Just kind of to warn everyone, there might be a little controversy in today's topic as well. I don't typically like controversy. I usually put my head in the sand, but there is could be a little controversy in this. What are we talking about today, Ken?
We're talking about subgenres of metal, subgenres
Yes,
of metal, and
the
how.
subgenres.
Oh my God, there's so many. Actually, before we even get started, man, I was doing a little bit of research into it, and there's actually a website that's dedicated to mapping it all out. Have you seen it before?
That's crazy.
It's
No, I have not seen that. I've seen maps of metal, like where metal's more popular in the world. Of course, like Norway, Sweden, Finland,
Yes.
But I have not seen what you're talking about.
It's
Though.
actually a
Tell us more about
website
that.
called Map of Metal, but it's not
Map of Metal.
necessarily where they are. It's actually more of like a timeline of where they developed, or what developed during that time. So I want to actually show this to you guys
Yeah,
because
let's check it
was
out, dude.
I thought it was super cool. So I'm just gonna go
Nice.
ahead and show you that for you. Here we go. Right over
Guys,
here.
while Ken's pulling that up, make sure you share this video. If you can click on the share button, first like it to give it a thumbs up. And if you can click on the share button and just throw that out on your Facebook real quick or something like that. It's like, hey, watch these cool dudes talking about metal. That would be appreciated. So thank you.
So this is, I don't know if you can see this, Jason, but this is,
Yes, I can. Yeah, it's awesome, dude.
this is actually, it says the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and then it goes on, of course, onto the 2000s.
Viking metal, dude.
And check this out, man. This is like super freaking cool. Here we go. Here's the 2000s and stuff like that.
This is awesome.
So it's just literally a timeline and map of this stuff right here. So we start all the way in the 60s.
Wow, dude. Yeah,
And
60s.
we're seeing where all of this comes from, right? So we got, obviously hard rock was like a big thing to come out of the 60s. And garage rock, blues rock, psychedelic rock. Of course, you had like people like the Beatles, and all that stuff eventually branched out into other genres as well. But check it out, man. Look, even from like, let's say garage rock, right? From the 60s into the 70s, we had the birth of punk rock, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
then
remember that. Yeah.
There's an entire lineage after punk rock, and you can see all the connections of where this started to develop. And even, of course, heavy metal, right? From hard rock, we got heavy metal, and from heavy metal, there's an entire tree that relates to all the other ones as well. And you can even see the influences from where they came from. For
Dude,
example,
that's crazy.
right? Look at death metal, right? From death metal, obviously definitely influenced by thrash, but also influenced by black metal. As you can see, the ties right over here, right? And I love this map. I think it's just so intuitive. I don't know who made this, but this is amazing information. Like right now we're looking at heavy metal, for example. If I click heavy metal and it says, heavy metal is a genre of rock music that developed in the late 60s and early 70s, largely in the United Kingdom and the US. And with roots in blues rock and psychedelic rock, the bands that created heavy metal developed a thick, massive sound characterized by highly amplified distortion, extended guitar solos, emphatic beats, and overall loudness. right? So
This is really cool, dude. I love this, man. I'm gonna study that. I'm
it,
gonna study that. We need to come up with something like that on our site, man. We'll, the Metal Mastermind. So you guys know, we actually have some really good blog content out there on Metal Mastermind. So I just want to let you guys know about that real quick. Actually, let me post this real quick for everyone, Ken, because we've got some really good meaty. I'm saying meaty because I'm hungry right now. I've been fasting for breakfast this morning. I don't know if that was a good idea or not.
well, yeah,
But
if you
no, we
go,
just put some really good content out there for you guys. So I want to share this real quick.
I'll even go to the blog just to show them for a second. You go to
Yeah.
metalmastermind.com /blog, where you go to the homepage
Yep.
and you just click the blog post.
Yeah.
And we got a whole bunch of stuff here for you guys to
Yeah.
read. A lot of it is basically like a condensed recap of the live shows. So if you're watching the live shows consistently with us, which some of you are, this is stuff that we've already talked about. However, it's really good to revisit some of the topics that we have. It's a little bit more flushed out, laid out, not so open-ended
Yeah.
like we are with our conversations. So there's a lot of really good information here, like everything you need to record metal music at home, the simple studio setup. Are you too
I hope you don't mind
old
that picture, dude.
to pursue
I don't mean you
music
sound
as
old,
a career? It is the most flattering picture
Oh, dude.
ever.
That's awesome.
Vintage versus modern recording methods. Do you need a website as a musician, or is social media enough? Right. So all of this stuff, man.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun to read. I definitely love the content that we share with you guys. Just remember that you guys are getting information from two sides. You got audio engineer and a musician, both coming together to create this for you. So I hope that we hope that you get a lot of information out of that. So
I mean, you guys could go, like, you could just take your phone. I know all you guys, take a poop while you're reading your phone anyway, so you could read the blog post during that time.
for sure, man.
You know.
It's the perfect time. Yeah, actually, what I like to do is read while I poop and watch while I wash dishes. So
There we go, dude.
That's
There
the
we go.
perfect combo. Oh man. So I love this website. I really want to kind of like go through today's topic on this website. I think it's a really great way to sort of have a discussion about this kind of stuff, and we could even look into what
it's
this
good.
stuff is. I know there's actually a lot there's a lot of deviations of metal out there. This
Ooh,
is the
so
reason why we
many.
have an entire segment about this. And that being said, this website really does give information on the type of genre, and it also gives you the bands and music. So, for example, for heavy metal, we have Black Sabbath, we have even Budgie as well, or Queen. There's a couple of things, or Judas Priest, Scorpions, quite a bit of stuff. Motorhead, of course. These are songs that came out during this time that really set the grounds or the foundation for everything else to come. Hey, you want to pick a random one over here, brother? Like there's a bunch that we could look at. Tell me where to zoom in and we'll do that.
Let's see. There's a like over towards the right down there. There's a section of darkness in the 80s, because the 80s were probably one of my personal favorite eras of metal, and early 90s. Stuff before and after that,
Yeah.
it wasn't really my thing so much. But so I see Death Grind. I've never heard of Death Grind. I've heard of grindcore. There's symphonic something metal.
We got well, that's getting to the 90s, so we got some 80s and 90s crossover here. So let's look at this.
Crossover.
So from
And
the
I like
80s,
that crossover. I like that range, that late 80s, early 90s crossover was kind of a really good time for metal. That's just my opinion, though.
So we have, in this sense, right, from the first wave of black metal, right, we trailed off into Viking metal. I love that there's like nothing really after Viking, because it's like its own thing.
Because it was so cool. You couldn't, like, how do you keep up with Viking metal?
Yeah. I really don't know anything that would go beyond the Vikings in terms of brutality. So we got the Vikings, then we got dark ambient, That's kind of interesting, which is a subgenre of ambient music that features foreboding, ominous, or discordant overtones. Really, really cool.
That's interesting.
You got places like Coil, Aphex Twin, Lust Mord, Tangerine Dream actually is considered dark ambient. So I remember watching, I believe the movie was called Legend from the
Yes,
80s.
dude.
You
Yes,
remember that
was
movie,
great.
man? Legend. My sister's in love with that movie. That's like one of her first like movies to ever like sweep her off her feet. She still loves it today. So I grew up around my sister, and Tangerine Dream made the soundtrack to that movie. So a lot of love for Tangerine Dream in my family.
I love dark ambient, dude. I see that up there kind of off on its own, and I'm a very much a dark ambient. And those of you who have listened to my music, you know I like to put those little ambient pieces into some of my songs. And Ken, you do some of that too, because you do a lot of phenomenal work with the orchestration and stuff like that. So that's a I just want to point that out, and I like how it's kind of sitting out there on its own. You know, that's a really cool style of
Yeah.
metal.
Well, I think this is really cool because it's actually not technically metal per se,
Right.
but it is an influence that led to other types of metal, like black ambient, for example. So let's check that
Gotcha,
out. For
gotcha.
example, ambient black metal is a style that combines elements of black metal and ambient dark ambient music. Um, Typically, the electric guitar is played together with synths and keyboards, or simply in an atmospheric style with much use of reverb. And here we have artists like Dark Space, Velvet Cocoon, and others that you can, take a listen to. And from what I understand, you can actually click one and listen to it right over here in the top right. So
Cool. That's pretty cool.
I don't want to play too long for copyright issues, but
Oh yeah. We get in
simply
trouble with
really,
that.
really, really, really cool to kind of like dig into what this kind of stuff is. um, let's check this
Faceless
out.
says dim Morgan. That's a cool band, Faceless. Yeah, I like.
Oh
They've got
yeah,
some good stuff. I was just reading Faceless' comment here.
I
Really good stuff there.
Dimmu Borgir. My, I used to have this conversation with old buddies of mine, and we used to call him Demon Burger.
Yeah, dude.
I
That's great.
yeah, it's just like I love Dimmu Borgir, and that was one of actually my influences for my own music. So for sure, I mean that falls into the realm of, I believe, symphonic black metal.
Yeah.
For sure. Here
I
we
love
have
that style too. Any kind of symphonic metal. You got some symphonic melodic metal, symphonic black metal. That kind of stuff is really cool because they're metal. Ken, when they first started out with creating heavy metal, going back to the 60s and even throughout the 70s, 80s, it was more just guitar driven. And I know a lot of people on right now, a lot of you guys are guitar players, so we like that. It's great. But at the same time, when you start putting more types of instruments in there, even like some of the Celtic metal, like
right.
what Leah does, and Nightwish even has like a Celtic feel to it. When you start integrating those other instruments, man, it just changes everything, and it just gives a different dynamic. So it's not like, okay, it's just another metal band. No, you've got all of these types of metal bands out there. So this is really cool, dude.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, and check out like some of the oddball ones out there, like depressive black metal.
Yeah, I saw
Like
that,
I was
dude.
like,
What
what
is
is this?
depressive black metal?
What is this? Depressive suicidal black metal.
Yeah.
DSBM.
Dude, what?
It looks like they just kind of switched up BDSM into something else.
That's great, dude.
Is a subgenre of black
Oh,
metal with a
man.
slow, dissonant, depressing atmosphere. It is primarily distinguished from traditional forms of black metal by its lyrical content, focusing on suicide, depression, anxiety, and hate, rather than traditional anti-Christian themes, with vocals that sound like desperate cries and pained screams. Wow,
Dude.
that's morbid.
No, Ken, that reminds me of something I came across today when I was working on one of our blog posts. I was doing some research, and I came across a website called catholicmetal.com. I have no idea what that is.
That brings me to this far right piece over here. You see what that
Yeah.
says? Unblack metal. Like I've never
I've
heard
never
of
heard of that, dude.
so from the second wave of black metal, we have something new that came unblack metal, or also known as Christian black metal. How does this even happen? How does an entire genre devoted to anti-Christianity somehow ends up coming back to Christianity in some way or shape or form? I have no idea, man.
Well, so there is Christian death metal. Like there's a band called Mortification who came out of the like the mid '80s, and they were Christian. They're one of the first Christian death metal bands. Mike Rowe, and actually they're whether you like Christian stuff or not, the quality of the music for that time was like really up there, you know. So it was. Now I've never heard of like unblack metal or Christian black metal, but this was just Christian death metal, you know, and you had Christian metal or whatever. But of course, now we've got all these other subgenres. So it's just very interesting to see this, though.
Yes, I think it's just also very entertaining. And guys, we're literally just looking at the waves of black metal, right? This is just black metal. So from the first wave of black metal, we started to see Viking metal and then that stuff. And then we got even into death metal, which I like. They have these sort of hierarchy type of symbols, right? Death metal is definitely a big umbrella within,
Huge, dude.
you know,
Huge.
and there's so many subgenres to that, and you can even see just what is a real subgenre. Like depressive black metal is very subgenre, very niche type of subgenre where you can see that emblem is not as big or as elaborate as the other ones. Like symphonic black metal is a more popular type of subgenre.
Is emo metal in there? Do you see emo metal anywhere? That's kind of depressing too.
Well,
you know,
it
just, like,
probably
look
is
down.
somewhere. I want to say it's probably a little somewhere else. Let's take a look. Let's see if we can find it. I'd say it'd probably be more in the realm of goth and stuff like that, but let's see. There's got to be somewhere here. If not, it's probably related to one or the other of something over in this map.
I like DW. I want to just highlight your comment real quick there. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, that movement was more of a because satanic black metal, right, or satanic metal in general was kind of rebelling against a lot of the Christian themes, especially in those Nordic countries. But then, you know, he's talking about, you know, there in his book, he's saying Christians who love metal music wanted to get in the metal scene too, you know, so they wanted something that maybe wasn't satanic or bashing what they believe, but they still love the music. So no, that's a great point, DW. And I was kind of ingrained in that era. Like again, back in the late '80s, early '90s, I was, you know, toying around with some of the Christian bands back then. I listened to all types of metal, but but it was just
Right.
interesting to see that come up. The problem that the Christian metal scene had and Christian rock scene in general had back then, and I don't know if that's the issue now, but they were almost copycatting what was going on out there. You know, it's like, well, we got to give Christians an alternative. So they were almost like, there's this band called Deliverance. They almost copied some of Metallica and Slayer's riffs. I don't think they could play Megadeth's riffs because those are more complex. But anyway, so that was kind of the challenges back then. There
For
was
sure,
only like
man.
maybe one or two, you know,
Yeah,
genuine.
absolutely, for sure. Um, I don't see emo metal here, but I'm
I
sure
don't think it's a thing, to be honest with you.
it might be.
Uh,
It might be something that's also very niche oriented that didn't make it on the list. I'm sure it's probably involved here. I would say it's probably more involved with this area of goth metal, perhaps a little bit to do with from
Goth metal. I love the band
yeah.
Evergrey, by the way. Tom England's the front man for that. I think they're Finnish or Swedish. I can't remember, but they're more of that goth metal. And what's interesting about that particular band, I fell in love with that band many years ago. The first time I heard them, and it was like, wow, they like anything else I've ever heard before, but it's still metal. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and you got a couple of other bands that are pretty well known, like Charon, Draconian,
Yeah,
Lacuna
dude.
Coil.
Draconian. What a cool
Um,
name. How do you get that name, Draconian?
I think those are the lizard people from the the alien type of discussion conspiracies that are out there. I mean, people
Okay,
are.
so I've got a controversial question for us. If you scroll a little bit back down where you were, Ken, you'll see something very in the middle there. New metal, like NU
Yes,
metal.
new metal for sure.
So
Uh,
here's what I want to ask. Guys, is new metal, is that really metal? Does it deserve to be called metal? I want
Yeah,
to hear some thoughts
let's.
on this.
While we do that, I'm gonna just read the description. So it says new
Yeah,
metal
yeah,
is a subgenre. It says of heavy metal, so it definitely has more stems from like hard rock.
classic
Um,
hard rock. Okay,
it is
gotcha.
a fusion genre which combines elements of heavy metal with other genres, including grunge and hip hop. The genre gained mainstream success in the late '90s and early 2000s. Some of the examples they gave us here were Korn, Limp Bizkit, Disturbed, Slipknot. They say is new metal, although I'm not sure about
Really?
that. I wouldn't say
Nah, I
necessarily
wouldn't
Slipknot,
call them. Yeah.
but maybe it's some of their older stuff. It says 99, so maybe a little different. Mudvayne, I could see sort of fitting into this
Yeah.
sort of vibe a little bit. Um, Look at this here. Look, new wave from new metal, new wave of American heavy metal.
Now, can I real quick give you guys my definition of new metal? And you guys can smack me around if you want. But new metal to me, how I differentiated it to me, and I guess one of the reasons why I don't really consider it personally in the metal genre, even though it's called new metal, is that it's metal that's not being played like metal. It's just distorted guitars, but just playing very simple chords and very simple vocal lines and stuff that I don't know you could teach someone to play after they've only been playing guitar for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just didn't feel like that it held up to the standard of what metal, and I'm not saying all metal needs to be complex. I'm not saying that at all. uh, some metal is more simple, especially some of the doom metal, which I actually like a lot.
Yep.
But
Traditional
I don't
doom.
know, new metal was just so commercialized and so dumbed down. I just, that's just my personal opinion, though.
Sure. Um, I think it makes a great point. And new metal is definitely kind of one of the more oddball type of, you know, styles of metal out there. It's not everybody's favorite, although, you obviously have bands like Disturbed that are freaking huge coming out of this wave.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Um,
And
but
I
I
never
think,
considered them new metal because they had a little bit, I don't know, they're kind of on that edge, but they kind of had their own sound at the same time.
yeah, I think they're definitely one of the sort of pioneers into this sort of genre.
Yeah.
Um, I think
Folk metal's cool.
folk metal. I also noticed, like I think this is not necessarily the most complete list of things, but it definitely is a much more fun way to look at it. But they
It
don't
is
even
cool,
they
yeah.
don't mention even from what I'm looking at, they don't even mention like neoclassical metal, which is like the realm of Yngwie
Yeah,
Malmsteen.
right.
Huge. I think they probably consider him probably part of symphonic metal or melodic power metal in this realm. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Right here, neoclassical metal. I
Okay,
missed that.
good, good. The power metal is something that's just like super like anthem and uplifting type stuff, but kind of dark at the same time. That's an awesome, really awesome
Word.
subgenre.
Yeah, look, Marty Friedman, Yngwie Malmsteen are
Yeah,
tension
dude.
for neoclassical, right? Influenced by
They
classical
put
music, of
Marty
course.
Friedman in neoclassical?
Oh yeah, Marty Friedman was definitely around
Yeah.
that era of working with Malmsteen. Look, even Racer
Yeah,
X.
true, true. Yeah, Racer
Um,
X, I remember that.
yeah,
The
Paul
funny thing about
Gilbert.
Marty Friedman, I love his playing. He's one of my favorite guitarists, by the way. But yeah, he can do all the neoclassical stuff, but he actually kind of preaches against just doing the same fast sweep arpeggios up and down the neck like most, all the other 150 neoclassical players do.
Right.
It takes a lot of talent to do that, but he's like, no, man, you got to add more feeling behind your solos, make it say something. So I don't know. I guess yeah, he's neoclassical, but he's more of a mature guitar player
I
with a bit more feeling.
I love that point because when I'm at my day job working at a SAE institute, I speak about music history for like an entire
Yeah.
week, which is honestly not enough time to talk about all of
No,
music history.
dude.
But we do go over the most important parts. And one of the things that I really have my students like really analyze is how music definitely changed and was inspired by those eras before them. So you'll hear, in the Renaissance, lingerings of medieval music, and of course in the Baroque era, lingerings of the Renaissance and stuff like that. So as we move forward, we start to hear this kind of stuff, but you also see a shift in how people looked at music. A great example is from anywhere before the Baroque period, you started to hear, well, you were hearing what we call absolute music, which was absolute music is music that's very much like a not so secular. It's very worship heavy, and all the music was from inspiration spiritually, in the sense where it was coming from your mind, and you didn't necessarily had a sort of theme for it. You didn't have like a story. It was just music. It was just raw music. This is where you get stuff like plain chants and melodies that come from that time. And then as we started to move towards the Baroque period, you started to hear a lot of program music, which is coming from, it kind of started with people like Vivaldi, where you hear like the four seasons, bum 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 ba bum ba bum 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 ba bum ba, right? That was supposed to be an emulation of springtime, and you would hear like the little birds in the waves of the violins and how they were playing it. So there was some sort of interpretation of nature or something of that sort within music. And as we get into something like neoclassical metal, this is where I was trying to get to. We are starting to hear with neoclassical a lot of that absolutism come into play, where you're just playing music, but it's raw music. It's not necessarily inspired by anything. It's just, virtuosity in a sense.
Gotcha.
And then you have, I totally agree with Marty Friedman on that, point, because it's very much easy to tune out. It's not something that you necessarily have an internal connection with. It's something to admire for sure, but it's not something that you feel emotionally attached to, which is, I think, one of the biggest selling points with something like pop music, right? It's relatable for people. People can easily listen and sing that stuff. With neoclassical music, you can't really sing all the notes that are going on in there. So
no, dude,
it's
you can't hum along with it.
Yeah, it's a little harder to follow, is what I'm saying. So but like something like,
you have to be into that sort of thing. It's like tech metal,
Yeah, it's very technical. Speaking of tech metal, right, there is an entire thing here called tech metal.
I see it down there, dude.
Right
there. Technical death metal or tech metal.
Yes, which is a subgenre of death metal that focuses on complex rhythms, riffs, and song structures. Technical experimentation in death metal began in the late 80s and early 90s. And in 89, Atheist's debut album, Piece of Time, was released, followed by Nocturnus's The Key.
Nocturnus.
Yes.
Ken, tell me real quick, dude, is there any, I'm going to put you on the spot, dude. Is there any genre of metal, whether it's on this map or not, is there any genre of music that the majority of people call metal that you feel like that doesn't quite belong in the metal?
Oh, probably screamo.
Okay, gotcha. Scream.
Oh God.
That's great.
God, man, I can't handle screamo.
What's a screamo? What are some screamo metal bands? Maybe I'm missing out here.
Man,
like, is
Fall Out
Killswitch
Boy.
Considered screamo?
I'd say Fall Out Boy.
Okay, now I know what you're talking. Okay,
has a little bit of
gotcha.
that stuff going on in there. Yeah, that sort of side of things. It just I never liked that side. I thought it was too cheesy. It was too weak. Forgive me if I offend anyone, but like, I don't care.
No, it's okay. I mean, what would you consider Killswitch Engage? They're not really screamo, are they? They're more like
I would not.
metalcore.
I would say they're either some sort of melodic metal in some sort of way. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can actually find um, something here that's related to Kill Switch. I'm sure we'll find it real cool.
Now I do like I love a lot of Kill Switches. Oh, I remember them, their older stuff. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. Have had a hard time getting into their albums, their more modern albums, because it just kind of sounds like it's just the same stuff over and over. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
heard one song, you heard them all.
yeah, for sure. I'm just gonna kind of take a look into see what we got going on over here. Here, new wave of American heavy metal. Kill Switch engage My Curse in 2006.
Yeah, my curse, dude.
Yeah, so they're considered on this map at least, and I'm sure it's somewhat accurate. Is a new wave of American heavy metal, which is a
Okay, gotcha.
movement that originated in the U.S. during the early to mid '90s and has expanded most in the year of the recent 2000s. Some of the bands considered part of the movement. Sorry about that. There's construction going outside. Considered part of the movement had formed as early as the 80s, but did not become influential or reach popular standing until the following decade. There is a later reference to the new wave of British heavy metal movement of the very early 80s. So I think this makes quite a lot of sense. Shadows Fall, Lamb of God.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
dude. Those
I
are some
would
great
definitely
bands, too.
consider these bands heavy metal, but it's not the traditional heavy metal. It's definitely this sort of new wave of heavy metal. Avenged Sevenfold is definitely a great example of that. Unearthed. I actually have a buddy of mine who also teaches at SAE, who played in the band Unearthed.
Dude,
Yeah,
nice,
yeah. His
man.
name is Kia Eshke. Really, really, really great guitarist and super cool dude. Great producer. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we'll get Kia on board and have a discussion with him one of these days.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, we're guys. But by the way, we plan to get some more faces on here at some point soon. And those may be like different sessions altogether. So we plan to do that. Um, oh no, Faceless is disagreeing with me. See, I knew we'd cause controversy on here.
Yeah, well,
No, yeah,
hey,
yeah. This is just my opinion, guys. It's like I said, a lot of the new Killswitch songs sound the same, and that's just my opinion. It kind of and maybe they don't sound the same. Maybe just when I'm listening to it, that's just what I'm hearing, and it's kind of like I had their latest album was Atonement, and there's one before that. I had a hard time getting into it, and so because of that, it probably sounded all the same to me.
yeah,
Because it didn't intrigue me enough to really dive deep into it. So, but it's like when I hear one song on those albums, I feel like I've heard the whole thing. That's again, guys, it's opinionated, right? I'm not bashing the band. They're a great band. I actually have a lot of respect for Killswitch. Kind of they were kind of like the forefront of the creation of that newer genre, which is really, really cool.
yeah, and I think some of those pioneers were people like Lamb of God to really set the stage for a lot of these bands to come forward. Um, yeah, I totally agree in that sense.
Yeah.
Let's look at some other ones. Look, rap metal.
Now that's a genre I am not a fan of. That's just
This
again just my opinion, but I just never liked they started doing that in I don't know what era that's under there, the
says
rap
the
metal, but
80s.
that actually started happening in the 80s.
Yeah.
Bands like Anthrax started collaborating with
Uh,
rappers.
r-
I don't know if you guys remember Metal Church, which I think they're still around, but a band called Metal Church collaborated with Sir Mix-a-Lot and did I can't remember what I think it was Iron Man that they did and had rap in it. So that was just kind of like that thing.
yeah. Well, this says Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Fits into rap metal. I guess I could see that. Although I never, I guess, considered Rage Against the Machine metal to begin with. It was kind of more like
Yeah, that's where we kind
rock.
of get off into that. Yeah, that
So
was more of like
it's
a
a little far
industrial
fetched.
type sound.
Yeah, it's like Faith No More.
Right.
This sort of stuff. I'm obviously thinking more of like modern rap, but it definitely does go further back than that. So I guess they make some point about that.
Yeah.
Let's see here, Funeral Doom. What is Funeral Doom?
Funeral Doom.
It says
That sounds like
it's like-
depressing. Didn't we cover depression metal already? I guess this is a different.
this is a style of doom metal that takes influence from both the death, doom, and dark ambient genres. It is played at a very slow tempo and places an emphasis on evoking a sense of emptiness and despair.
Ooh, yes.
Typically,
That's what we
electric
like.
guitars are heavily distorted, and keyboards or synths are used to create a dreamlike atmosphere. Mournful chants or growls are
Oh,
often in the background. Kind of creepy.
that's good. I see alternative metal on there. When I hear the word alternative, I cringe just a little bit, and it's just because of my experience when when I was first starting to play guitar. This was back in like 1989, 1990. So you had a lot of great guitar players then. They've always been great guitar players, but then towards you climb up towards the mid 90s, and then when the whole Seattle and grunge sound started taking over, they also called that alternative rock. So when I see the word alternative, I immediately think, okay, here's the era of people that don't play guitar solos, because almost every great guitarist was literally put out of business. They had their own pandemic for a while because guitar solos were associated with cheesy 80s hair metal. So that stuff, the guitarists that were once being played on the radio, they couldn't play solos on the radio anymore. So that was just like a little piece of history for you guys. You guys are probably too young to know that, but um, anyway, so I see alternative anything, I cringe. And I know that's not, the premises for that style of music, but anyway,
Yeah. Well,
just what.
they've kind of listed here Tool. I get.
Okay,
I kind
okay.
of I kind of thought Tool to be more of a progressive metal type of band, but maybe I'm wrong on that front. Um,
Hey,
Incubus. Uh,
Incubus, was
uh,
that metal? Incubus, I didn't really
I thought that was
consider that.
sort of a rock thing too.
Yeah, yeah.
System of a Down,
And I guess, yeah,
Godsmack.
I never considered them metal either. That's where my question to begin with comes up. With it's like, okay, where do you cross the line between rock and even hard rock and metal? Because like I don't even consider bands. I know Scorpions. We were talking about them earlier. I think they helped a lot of metal bands, but I've always considered Scorpions as hard rock. I mean, I love the Scorpions too, man. If I could
Yeah.
like be in the band with Scorpions, that'd be so cool. But no, like I've always considered them hard rock. Bands like Dokken, even some of the hair, we call it hair metal, but it was more just hard rock.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that too. Um, let's take a
So
look over here.
where's that line at? How far into rock do we go before we stop calling it metal?
Uh, you know, there. I mean, would I consider System of a Down to be metal? Um, in some ways, perhaps because of there is definitely many times where you hear that sort of high speed sort of energy within System of a Down. But I think what really defines a really good way to define what metal vocals are. I mean, what metal music is really by the vocals. Um, yeah, and when I hear Surge Tankian, I'm not really thinking metal. I'm thinking hard rock. Um, so
Yeah, yeah.
it really I'm really trying to think about this. Maybe you guys have some good ideas on what separates between. That's a good question. What separates between alternative metal and maybe alternative rock? Right? What's that line?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in the comments.
It's Yeah, put that in the comments, guys, if you can, because that's where I always had a hard time with that. But of course, you've got other metalheads that love extreme metal, and they will tell you bands like the modern Megadeth isn't really metal, that it's more rock. And of course, Megadeth's last album, Dystopia, just listening to it kind of almost sounded more rock than metal. If I were to hear it for the first time, I don't know that I would. I don't know. I mean, it's still metal, of course. I
Right.
can't take anything away from Dave Mustaine, but if you're into the really heavier genres of metal, and then you hear like someone else talk about metal and some of these bands that we're mentioning, from alternative metal and stuff like that, they're gonna be like, "That's not metal." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it goes back to like a perspective, that you have based on your own taste.
Absolutely.
No, Faceless, not more distortion, more cowbell. Faceless, come on, man, get it right. Who needs more distortion?
So, what is this crossover thrash?
Oh, never heard of that before, dude.
I've never heard of this. Often abbreviated to crossover, is a form of thrash metal that contains more hardcore punk elements than standard thrash. It is sometimes referred to as punk metal, although this is generally incorrect due to the existence of other music genres that combine forms of punk rock and heavy metal, such as grunge and crust punk. While thrash metal is heavily influenced by hardcore punk, the overall sound of crossover thrash is more punk influenced yet more metal sounding and aggressive than traditional hardcore punk and thrashcore. Interesting. And we have some examples
Oriental
like
metal, dude. I'm sorry. I see
Suicidal
Oriental metal.
Tendencies, Guar is considered crossover
Guar.
thrash.
Really?
That's what they put over here.
So Ken, you and I clearly need to do our own metal map, and we need to make things right in the metal
It's not a
How
bad
would you guys
idea.
like? Would you guys like to for Ken and I to do a metal map, and then you guys can actually have some input in that? I'm sitting there saying we're going to create something. Now we got to go create it, but you guys can have some influence in that as well.
Yeah, maybe there's something there that we can do. I don't know if it'd be
We
as
gotta do
elaborate
something.
as this though. This is like pretty.
Yeah, it'd be a step at a time. We'd have to take one step at a time on it. We would have to start with just the core, like classic metal, thrash metal, death metal, and kind of venture out from there. Maybe we keep it strictly metal though, and not venture off into the alternative, the stuff that we don't really consider metal. I think a lot of people agree on here. There's some bands listed on here that they're just not really metal.
Yeah. Well, over here it says actually there's a legend that we didn't even get to check out. So on the top
The
right,
Legend of Zelda.
we have primary genre, which is the big sort of skull and crossbones with the thing going on. Then you have a metal genre, then the fusion genre. Okay, that's the one with the metal and the horns. And then there's a related genre, which is kind of like what we see here with dark ambient. So black ambient is a fusion of dark ambient and black metal, right? If that makes any sense.
Black
The
metal's cool, dude. I love the vocals. Like I love that deep amount of Marth vocals as well, and that's kind of where my death metal vocals align. But I do love some of those really higher pitched black metal vocals. It's not screamo or anything like that, right? It's not screaming, but it's just I don't know, it's just a really evil, demonic sounding vocal. It's just cool.
Yeah, I'm totally into that type of stuff. With Behemoth, for example, is like one of
Yeah,
my
dude.
favorite black metal bands of all time. Um, Death and Roll, Death and Roll. What is Death and Roll? Is a
You know,
term.
you mentioned Behemoth real quick, dude. And
Yeah.
I know you're a big fan of Behemoth. I was just talking to in a session the other day with Lindsay Schoolcraft from she's ex Cradle of Filth, which is a phenomenal band, but she's on her own now. She's actually in the course that Ken and I, the school that Ken and I are in, and she was talking about the lead guy for Behemoth, his marketing tactics and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to start following him a little bit more.
Yeah, Nurgle is pretty good at marketing. I would give it to
Yeah.
him for sure. Lindsay would be a great person to talk to about this stuff too. Yeah, her
Oh yeah,
experience
yeah.
with Cradle, she's definitely got a lot of input on that stuff. Which Cradle kind of falls under the whole, I think, symphonic idea.
Symphonic black metal, maybe.
Symphonic black metal. That's where it was. Where was that? Symphonic black
Yeah.
metal, right over here. Yep, Cradle
I would
Filth.
kind of put them in there. Oh,
Yeah,
they're there. Good.
with
Yeah,
Demo
because they have a
Borgir,
very unique sound, and even some of their songs, Ken, is
Emperor.
not. They're not really. I mean, a lot of it is, but there's a couple of songs they have that's not really super heavy guitar driven, but it still has that underlying darkness and just really cool stuff, dude.
Absolutely.
You're right, DW. Exhumed has some awesome screams and growls, man.
Now, you pointed out what Oriental metal. Oriental
Yes,
metal.
this right there, dude. Yeah, your
Sub-
cursor's right there by Celtic metal, right above Celtic metal.
It is a subgenre of folk metal characterized by the use of Oriental folk music styles. The progressive
Yeah.
metal outfit Orphaned Land was formed in '91 in Israel, and with their first
dude.
only demo, "The Beloved's Cry," released in '93, immediately creating a media stir that quickly drew attention to their unorthodox style. Members of the group were still teenagers when they released their debut album, Sahara, in 1994, and the music of Orphan Land borrowed heavily from Middle Eastern music styles, with traditional
Nice.
elements coming from both Jewish and Arabic folk music. Acclaimed as one of the world's most unique and trailblazing heavy metal bands, Orphan Land's style of music has since been dubbed Oriental metal. Interesting.
Interesting.
This is definitely something I've never really touched upon. These are,
No, me either, dude. This is
yeah,
cool.
this is really, really cool. I mean, you look at a map like this and you're just like, whoa, what is that? Let me go check that out, which is awesome. And what I love is that you can listen to this stuff too. Let's see what some of this stuff kind of sounds like. I'll try to fast forward into a part if I can get this to
Yeah,
load.
Faceless, I saw that drone metal. I'm like, what the hell is drone metal, dude?
Drone metal. Let's see. Metal? I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
It is cool. But
That's
I'm
yeah,
not sure
I
if
like
it's
that. It
necessarily
reminds me of music from India. There's some little Thai influence in that as well. You guys don't have a big background in the Thai culture, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I definitely hear it with the drums, but let me see it one more time. See if there's another band we can just kind of check out for a second. So I guess I hear a little bit of definitely the metal influence going on in there. Maybe that's not the best example, but they
Yeah.
have a little bit of that sort of Arabic vibe going on in that. I wish their production was a little better because it
I
definitely.
love that Arabic vibe too. Yeah, I collaborated with someone in Dubai last year called the Arabian Panda. Now one thing I'll say though, Ken and everyone, yeah, he's cool. Kareem is such a cool dude. Has really had a great time. But one thing I'll say about these genres of metal, sometimes a metal band may be deemed as a specific subgenre just because they're from a certain region, if that makes sense. In other words, if you didn't know where they were from and couldn't see them, then you might be like, oh, this is just regular thrash metal, regular whatever. So I think sometimes subgenres can actually uh, adopt a band because they're from that region and just kind of call it that, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's kind of a cultural thing. But yeah,
Uh,
dude, Ken,
this is
I mean,
crazy.
like, so three favorite genres, dude. If you had to tell me, like, what's your three favorite subgenres of metal, man?
You know what, man? I'd say for sure it's going to be symphonic metal.
Okay.
Um, I really love melodic death.
Yes.
Um, and I'd probably say, let me see, it'd probably have to go back to some of the classic, maybe like I love like Priest and stuff like that. So I'd probably say heavy metal
Yeah.
too. Occasionally I'll dive into a lot of other different types of metal just because of it switches things up. But I tend to listen to those on a more regular basis. Um, so black metal. I do love black metal, and Behemoth is one of my favorites, but I don't listen to that as often as I do maybe on the other ones.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I'd say those for my choices. What do you think? What are some of yours?
Well, so I love melodic death metal, dude. When
Yeah.
you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's right up my alley. Like I love bands like Arch Enemy and Amon Amarth.
Yep.
Those are just phenomenal bands. I tend to like a lot of the thrash metal, but I don't listen it that a lot of my playing is influenced by thrash metal because that's just what I grew up with. Like the older Metallica, and I emphasize older Metallica, the Megadeth, Testament, bands like that, and even going into bands like Sepultura, which they were kind of considered thrash, but I don't
Right.
know, maybe along the death metal line. But I also like, if I were asked, like, if I could only, this is a real crappy question I'm going to ask you and ask myself, but if you were forced to only listen to one band for the rest of your life and that's all you could listen to, what would it be? And I think most of the time that band would be Nightwish. So I guess that's under symphonic metal.
It is under symphonic metal. I
Okay.
actually like to correct one of my. I think heavy metal is definitely, one of the things I listen to. But I actually just realized progressive metal is for sure one of the
Mm,
things that I listen to
okay.
even more
Yeah,
than I
because you
do.
mentioned Michael Romeo earlier, Symphony X.
Yeah,
They're more prog metal.
for
So
sure. Yeah, Symphony X and Dream Theater. Those are definitely big inspirations of mine. So I'm listening to prog quite a bit, in
yeah.
addition to melodic death and symphonic metal. Um, I'll tap a little bit into symphonic black, but that's not typically what I'm listening to. It'll typically just be like
Occasion, yeah.
symphonic, yeah, symphonic on the
Sometimes you
general
need
sense.
that other subgenres. Like you've got those other subgenres kind of in your back pocket. It's like, okay, and you just need something different. So you'll pull one out. It's like, oh, okay, this is refreshing. But then you kind of get tired of it. It's like then you go back to your normal stuff, you know.
Right, exactly. So yeah, man, this is super cool. I'm actually really glad I found this. Made for I think a really great presentation here today. But Jason, I mean, like looking at this map alone, where everything stems from and where their like roots are even going further back into the 60s, like this is like some crazy stuff and some realizations about how metal has changed over the years. I mean, like, what do you think is going to come next?
It's hard to say. I sometimes have this theory of things kind of circling back in time. You see this with clothing trends, which us metalheads we don't really get into that because we don't, we wear all black anyway, right? And eyeliner and stuff like that. I'm kidding about the eyeliner, but yeah, but
Oh,
I think that
there's
here's the thing when I see
glam metal.
talking to a lot of other metal musicians and just from my own videos and stuff that I put out there and my own research is that metal a lot of metal has become so technically driven, which is great. It's great to have all these options. You and I a while back we did a live session on vintage versus modern recording techniques. But I kind of see some bands maybe circling back to an older style of heavy metal and thrash metal and integrating that into more modern metal. So I don't even know what that would be called. You know what I mean? And I often struggle with this, in the micro niche land. It's like, okay, well, what am I? And Ken, I know you do the same thing because just thinking about your band Homeric, especially the new project that you're going to be releasing in 2021. I just let it out of the bag. But I listen to that and even recording the guitar tracks for that. I'm like, there's a lot of melodic death metal because the vocals in there, but there's definitely symphonic and progressive metal in there. You have some wicked progressions that are very complex. So the prog is extremely prominent in that, and it's almost like you've got all of those things going on. So it's hard to like just using your project as an example, that album that you're working on, it's hard to narrow that down to one subgenre.
Yeah,
It's almost
you
that's
know,
how these other subgenres get created.
I kind of think of it as a subgenre to symphonic metal. Um,
Yeah, I would
kind
say that. Yeah.
kind of how you have symphonic black metal became a thing. Well, mine's is I call my music cinematic metal. You know,
Yes, yes. That's
and
yeah, and that's a good
I think that kind of puts it in a sort of nice bow, but
yeah.
the defining thing about that kind of music that I'm creating is very much of a narrative, almost like you're listening to an audible, watching a movie, listening to a film score type of metal soundtrack.
Yeah.
So that's why I call it cinematic metal. Perhaps that becomes a thing. I don't know, but it's a thing that I feel is deriving a lot from these inspirations. So like I even mentioned, and you said prog and symphonic and this other stuff and melodic death metal is definitely influencing my music there too. So it's kind of like a combination of all those three together in that sense. And I'm wondering because like Jason, you've made a lot of instrumental metal. How would you classify your music? Is it like some more of like on the thrash side of things? How would you describe your music that you've come
It's
across so
mine
far.
has morphed, has changed, man. Like my very first album, Apocalyptic Dreams, that's more some people may even consider that, hard rock or instrumental, but it's more, I guess, as like as I call it, classic heavy metal, instrumental heavy metal. And I did the heavy metal workout album series, which that's
Yeah.
pure heavy metal as well, instrumental. But when I released Masterpiece last year, my entire genre just kind of like morphed into something else because I implemented three new things: an extremely awesome metal drummer, who's renowned among the metal community. I also implemented vocals, which I did a mix of death metal vocals, and I put some kind of thrash metal vocal styles in there. And then I also have, I guess, a lot of you got kind of like a thrash metal vibe in there too, but on a 7-string guitar. So I want to call it melodic death metal, but not all songs are death metal, and there's actually 2 instrumental tracks on there. So it's kind of like I called it melodic death meets with a side of thrash or something like that. This album I'm working on now, which is called Overcometh, that that's going to be very similar in nature to Masterpiece, but there are also some changes to that as well. There's going to be some instrumentals. I was going to make it all instrumental, but I started writing lyrics for one of the songs the other day. I'm like, well, crap, now I got to make this some vocal songs in here too. I got to complicate it. So I don't, it's really hard to say it, but there's a lot of thrash metal, classic heavy metal, melodic death metal involved in that. I don't want to say prog because, there's a lot of riffing involved,
Right.
but it's not quite to the prog level. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, Jason, you got a lot of talent in your music, man, and I think
I don't think you do.
you've had, quite a great impact on several people. I know a lot of people that are on this channel are following, Jason Stallworth, and guys, like this new wave of, I want to say it's really a new wave of music because we're now in 2020, right? So there is definitely new music coming out of different sorts that never could have been put together if it wasn't for, I guess, a timeline of, you know, of development. Like you needed, in order to get to where we are today, you needed to have certain things and happen and put things in it put things in place and perspective. So what I think what comes next is like just a lot more global influence in our music. I think metal is definitely one of the forefront genres to kind of push those boundaries, and I think it's you can even see it with just the entire map and how many different genres of metal there are. It's always been one of the more progressive, not just for the progressive metal side, but just progressive overall as a genre of music, to push boundaries. So I feel like it's a really interesting place to be as an artist, and to create music for this genre, because you could literally create something so different, and it's still within the realm of metal. I think
That's true.
what classifies as metal, I think, is pretty much like heavy distorted guitars,
Yeah, yeah.
fast,
The attitude as well. Yeah,
punchy drums, and yeah, attitude, vocals. It's all that attitude together.
yeah.
Um, Not necessarily tied to just one or the other. Um,
Right.
and I think with those elements, how whether you add more salt than pepper or more pepper than salt, or you decide to throw in parsley or
Yeah.
cinnamon, I don't know, man. Like do it
Sriracha.
up, and maybe become some sort of dubious food, or it's some really amazing dish. Who knows? But it can be done, man. And I think because of the mindset of metalheads, there's more room for experimentation,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to some other genres of music. I don't know if like for example, like I love country, but I don't think country's very versatile. I think
No,
country
really, dude.
I think country's got its own thing going, and if you're a country artist, then maybe you can dive into a little bit of Americana from that, or but it's not.
Well, you can Southern rock too. If you're country, a lot of country and Southern
Yeah,
rock kind of cross borders as well.
yeah. I mean, like you get but then you also get into like Pantera, which is southern rock metal,
Kind of southern metal, yeah, yeah,
you know?
exactly, dude. They're very, very southern, dude. So that's the beauty of metal, though. Like, and I don't like you guys as musicians. I don't know that I'd get so hung up in trying to classify yourself in a particular genre, and it kind of frees you up. Like you don't want to go from okay, I'm a metal band, and now I'm going to be a country band tomorrow. But at the same time, like looking at my music, how it's morphed, it was all instrumental, more of like classic heavy metal, and now it goes, to melodic death metal. I don't think I lost any fans in that transition. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and even some of the people that know me from that started listening to my music from Masterpiece, the melodic death metal album. I guess I'm calling it that. That's what it is. But even some of those people go back to my earlier albums, which don't really sound anything like Masterpiece, and they still dig them. It might not be their favorite because they want something heavy. But anyway, so what I'm saying is, I guess don't harp so much on what genre that you're gonna be. Just make some good music, what's from the heart, and you will probably evolve. Because I'll say this as well, even after you release that, I know a couple of you right now, I think DW had to leave at the Faceless. A couple of you are working on your own EPs right now, which is phenomenal. Keep doing it. But don't obsess so much over trying to make it fit into a tiny little box of a genre. Let it be organically, on its own what it is.
Yeah.
And the people that listen to your music, they will tell you what the genre is. I don't even worry about my genre, my subgenre anymore. I'm like, hey guys, here it is. And then I'll hear the comments come back and they're like, oh, this sounds like this. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's a great way to go because I think you should just create the music that you like.
Yeah.
Um, Over time, it will reveal itself to you
Yeah.
what it is.
Absolutely.
And if you like creating that stuff, you're typically going to create more of it. So
Yeah.
your genre will be classified by what you create. I don't think you can. I mean, you definitely can go in and create like just thrash metal style music, but by putting that yourself in a box, you're not creating anything new. So you're just kind of
Right.
tacking on what other people have done before, and you try to emulate that. And that puts you a needle in a haystack for the most part. You don't really have your own sort of pond to master. You're not the big
Yeah.
fish in that pond. You're like the small fish in the ocean. So I like, for example, like I love film scores, and that's one of the biggest things that
That's
I
cool stuff.
listen to. So when I create music, and I love video games too. So um, I'll create music that's very much inspired by those sounds because I'm so used to it, and that's what I like to listen to a lot of the time. So that becomes part of my palette. And yeah, it's not like it's just video game music or it's film score music or film score metal or video game metal. It's all of that and something more, So it's a lot of fun. I think it's a wonderful process. It's a process that takes a long time, and I think if you're an artist, I think you have to be committed to that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but you know, if you're in that, it's kind of a no-brainer to continue doing it. I think the hardest thing for an artist, I think, is the struggle for identity, and how do you how do you learn more about yourself? And we tend to be more introspective and reflective of things, and I think that's one of the. I think it's good to look at something like this today, like a subgenre metal map, just to kind of get a ballpark of where you are in comparison, right? And it's not to say that other metal bands are the end all be all. Some of them are, like Megadeth and Metallica, definitely, those are pioneering highlights. Um, but there are other bands on the list that maybe they also fall into not just one but multiple different genres, and also
Yeah. Kind of
in a
like us.
sense, some bands, they literally change over time. Even like Job for a Cowboy, for example, they were like super like brutal like metal, and they
Yeah.
sort of softened over the course of time. Um, So I feel like it don't if you're struggling to find out what subgenre you're in and what your music fits, I would say don't even worry about it so much, because
Yeah.
the people that, like you said, Jason, that listen to your music will let you know. They'll give you those keywords that help you to define your music.
It's metal at the end of the day too. It's just, it's going to be metal. You know, you guys are metalheads, so it's be happy just that it's metal. You know,
Yeah, I think yeah, if you're just creating metal music, create the metal music that you like to listen to,
yeah,
or that you think needs to be out there, right? If nobody's doing a certain type of style that you feel like should be out there, you don't know exactly how to describe it, but you're on your way, you know. So give it the time it needs. It's got to incubate, and
for sure.
it will reveal itself to you, right? It's like, for example, it's like, look at it like a kid. You don't know what your kid's gonna become when it's a grown up, you know. Like,
Yeah,
just
you don't.
you just got to nurture the kid. They'll find their way, and eventually life will show them who they are, you know. And I think you got to look at your music really like a baby, like your baby, like we call it that. It is our baby, and then it matures and it grows and it defines itself in that same way.
Yeah,
So that's all I have
good
to say about
stuff.
that.
No, good stuff. Well, hey, this was I know we've gone over the hour here, but this has been a really fun session, guys. I mean, I learned a lot today. Ken, you know, we're pointing out some stuff
Yeah, me
never even
too.
heard of before, so it's very interesting, man. So I hope everybody is encouraged, though. I know this is kind of a fun session, and we'll do more like this. Uh, we've got something a little bit deeper for you next week, which I really think you guys are going to enjoy. Probably some controversy there too, because you know, and we don't do this on purpose. We do not, guys. We Ken and I both we fell from the same tree or whatever you want to call it. We're not people that bring up
Yeah.
controversy just for the sake of bringing up controversy. But you know, there are some things that we bring up naturally. We want to tell you guys where we stand on certain things, and it's only because we think it's helpful uh, to you as far as you know everyday life and your music. And I say life as well because it's metal mastermind. You know, it's more than just, we're more about just the studio and the stage and creating music. We also want to help people develop, you know, a different mindset that they need to be successful and that sort of thing. So that's, I'm going off on a tangent here, but that's some more stuff you can expect from us. But yeah, next week's going to be very helpful, extremely awesome. So stay tuned for that. But Ken, any closing thoughts from your end, dude?
Yeah, just for those of you who haven't, signed up for our free guide, we have, free guide to the ultimate home studio on our website, metalmastermind.com/join. You can subscribe and get that guide straight to your email. It'll give you information on how to either start your studio or enhance whatever you've got right now. It's a quick read, and it gives you a bunch of meat just to get you up and running. So, if you haven't done that already, please do. And of course, remember to like the video, subscribe to us. Helps us with the algorithms on YouTube. We want to reach more people out there. So, and we'll be, I know we didn't, I think, get to release a video last Friday, but we'll be releasing a video this Friday. So we want to let you guys know about that. And guys, this is stuff like this is really, really fun to do again. And it's awesome to see you guys so supportive of this kind of stuff. So thanks for tuning in to Metal Mastermind. And of course, horns up, man.
Horns
This
up, guys.
is
See you next week.
See you next week.